And we have an amazing lineup of panelists for you today from amazing companies. We're hoping that you're going to get loads of insight and, some food for thought out of our webinar today. My name is Alison Laxton. I'm the HR Manager and Legal Officer for Regenesis Business School, joining you from our Sandton offices today. With me, I have our colleague, Advocate Kevin Malunga. He's our head of our Regenesis Law School. Welcome, Kevin. Thank you for joining us today. Now, this is going to be a webinar on the future of HR in the digital age, and we're spotlighting the legal sector. So before we get into that, I just want to welcome our panelists and introduce them to everybody. We have with us Helen Wilsonach. She joins us as the Head of Employment and Benefits from Bowman's. We have Silna Steyn, who joins us as the Managing Director from SSLR Incorporated. We have Cleone Carpenter, who is the founder of GDocs. We have Boipelo Matodlana joining us as the Graduate Program Manager for Cliff Decker Hofmeyr. We have Claire McMullen. She is the Head of People and Talent from Psych, as well as Charlene Ledwaba. She joins us as the Graduate Recruitment and Development Manager from Bowman's. And last but not least, Hanel Frey, who joins us as the Director of Hanel Frey Incorporated. So a big welcome. Thank you for taking your time to join us today. We're really looking forward to our next 90-minute discussion. So just an introduction before we get into our points of discussions and our questions is that we know that the digital revolution is having an unprecedented impact on the way in which we work, how people operate together, and how we interact and how we learn. There have been such significant developments in AI, robotics, social media advancements, even driverless vehicles and drones, and things like machine learning, which 30 years ago we would have never heard of, and things like virtual reality as well. And these are all developments that are changing both the quantitative and qualitative requirements of the future of our workforce. Now, as HR professionals, we have to find new ways to manage the talent. How do we attract people? How do we develop them? How do we incentivize them and retain them? And how do we inspire the principles of passion, innovation, and an entrepreneurial spirit and excellence in our workplaces? Now, to succeed in this rapidly new digitized world, we have to embrace change. It really is an adapt or die situation. We have to stay competitive ahead of the game. And this is going to focus on the legal sector today, and hopefully it will give you insight into how that is going to be done. Now, we've seen some external changes. Courts have gone online, something that we all thought we'd never seen. Law has always been deemed as a very archaic, paper-heavy profession, going back donkey's years, and we've now lost that face-to-face interaction with our clients, our stakeholders, and even our, bodies of justice. Going to court and appearing in court is often done online now. We also have differences in how we reach our clients, what services we need to offer our clients, and the changes they've had to meet and how we support those changes. Now, internally, we've also had to make big changes in how do we market and how do we get staff to come in? How do we promote remote working? Do we use flexi suites? How do we manage and performance manage people remotely? What software do we use for that? And all of these different changes in how we hire people, source people, and retain people in our respective industries. So let's start off with our first question, which is, how do we as legal professionals stay relevant in the new digital age? And I'd like to get some input. There's talk around paralegals being replaced by AI, software coming in and making certain jobs redundant. So how does the legal profession stay relevant in this new digital age? So if any of our panelists want to put up their hand and be brave.
Alison, I think I'll give it a shot. I'll start the conversation. I think what we've obviously seen over the last two years is a shift, right, in terms of the Great Resignation, etc. And we've now needed to plan ahead, even as graduate recruiters. We needed to be more visible where we weren't visible in the past. We needed access to students who generally wouldn't be your traditional your traditional graduates who'd come into a law firm, for example. What we've done over the last few years is we've opened up simulations to people who all the way from high school level up until university. We've got an open access program called the Virtual Experience Program that starts planting the seed much earlier on for law professionals, right? So it's really an amazing program. We've seen it come out and really, we're one of the top graduate programs in the country only because of how we've needed to adapt to change and make sure that people have access to know how to get into a Big Five law firm. So I think that has definitely been a great win for us as Bowmans. And we've also seen the impact that it's had when we are on campus. And I'm so grateful that we're able to get back onto campus this year, as well as high scholars who come in and job shadow, for example, and have done this program and have access to exactly some of the matters that we deal with at Bowmans.
Thank you so much. I think that's some really incredibly valuable input. And I think that we have a lot to learn from Bowman. Sounds like they've really stayed ahead of the curve there and that they've got a fantastic, program going for graduates. Let's move over to Cleone and let's hear what she has to say.
Hi, thank you very much. So with regards to legal professionals staying relevant, the one thing that has been noticed is that although technology is advancing so much, the legal profession actually hasn't kept up with change. And we've been warned about this since 1994. If you check out lots of academic articles, they have been warning us about the digital age and our needs to adapt. But with the General Counsel report in 2022, it was noted that only 27% of legal firms actually incorporate AI. The difference that needs to be noted with regards to AI is that it's different to software. It's different to automation. Automation has a set of inputs which give you outputs. With AI, what it uses is that it teaches, or humans teach it, to be able to actually have human solutions. But we have been notoriously slow in this. But if you look at North America is actually taking great strides with their students, which I think is going to change the legal industry completely. If you look at Georgetown University, their legal center actually has an annual competition where the law students are required to team up and compete against each other to take complex legal problems and turn them into apps. Another great stride that they're taking is, I think it's Vermont University. They now have a Center for Legal Innovation, and they actually teach courses on how law professionals can take legal problems and turn them into apps in order for companies to continue staying relevant and not be left behind.
So Cleone, thank you. I see Hanel's hand is up, so is Boipelo's. We'll get to you in a minute. And I think that is very important to note, is that the profession as we know it in South Africa, more specifically, is quite paper heavy. And there are very few firms out there who can say we are paperless. I think that there are incredible advancements being made, and hopefully we'll be seeing that thanks to globalization soon within South Africa and across the legal industries worldwide. I think more and more, law firms are having to look at new technologies. They're having to look at what is AI. This is a completely alien concept to certain law firms. And how do we get unstuck so that we can actually serve our clients properly? Now, I see Hanel, your hand is up, and then Boipelo, I'll go over to you. So Hanel, let's hear your input.
Thank you, Alison. I think you make a good point, is that we can use AI, but we need to understand what it means. Because I think there is this misperception when we look at the future of the legal profession, and people either think that robots are going to take over and they're going to go and argue the matters for us, and we're going to become completely redundant in future. Alternatively, they think if you have a problem, you're going to Google it, you're going to get your template populated, and we're not going to need the lawyer anymore. But I think for every single person on here, every single person wants the same thing, and every consumer wants the same thing. And we ultimately want the best value or the best product for the cheapest price. And I believe ultimately that is what we can achieve to stay relevant. We can use technology in order to become digitalized, in order to become more time efficient. And obviously, we know we are a profession that charges by the hour. If we can become time efficient, it means that we can actually then become cost efficient. And I believe that is a way which we can use the technology to stay relevant. And I believe that we need to continuously upskill ourselves. We need to look at how we can use this technology in order to remain relevant and to use it to our benefit to become efficient.
Thank you, Hanal. And I think you've made a valuable point there about how a lawyer's time is their money. Quite literally, when somebody said time is money, I think a lawyer came up with that phrase. And that is really the truth, is that the more time you have free, the more you're able to take on. And technology can assist us. So Hanal, brilliant point. Thank you for that contribution. And I think that we should be looking at technology out there that can help legal professionals do exactly that. Now, I'm going to move over to Boipelo. Let's hear what you have to say on how do we stay relevant?
Thanks, Alison. I think I agree with the first three panel members. It's, understanding what technology you're going to use and why. Is it going to be relevant to the business practices and your clients' needs? And is it also going to be user-friendly for all your stakeholders, whether it's internal, i.e. your employees, or external, i.e. Even alternative legal service providers that you collaborate with. But just going back to your question around, whether technology then makes certain roles redundant, I think that that's a misconception. Technology wouldn't necessarily make people redundant. It makes certain tasks in people's roles redundant. And I think it's in understanding that you're able to figure out where is the real value add here. So training up even your junior lawyers to work and collaborate across, different platforms across different levels of people. So whether they're engaging with paralegals, different types of managers, technologists, software developers, etc. Those are then the skills that you then, as a law firm, have to start training your junior lawyers especially on, so that they then become the professionals that can create a value-added service to our clients. So if I think as just an example internally here, Cliff Decker Hofmeyer, we ensure that our candidate attorneys go through design thinking workshops and project management workshops, because those are skills that they wouldn't have gained at varsity, right? And those are then the skills that are then important for a future lawyer, or a lawyer that's going to be future fit in terms of the technology that they're going to use and the different interventions that they would have to. So yeah, I think that's just my additional point there.
Thanks, Boipelo. And I think you are making a relevant point. And I think that, everybody gets a little bit nervous when we talk about digitization and am I going to lose my job to a robot? And I think that what you're saying is completely correct, and that there is still that human element to law. And there's always that emotional connection to your client, and everybody has a different story. They come to you at different problems, and that's something we haven't quite mastered for a robot to do yet. So I think that is something not to be afraid of. And when we do see it, that is quite a scary thought. Should a robot be able to handle, all the emotional work that comes with litigation and legal practice? I'm now going to move on, and just the last point from my side. I think we look at Cliff Decker Hofmeyer, we look at Bowman's, very large law firms. I think we have a lot to learn from these firms who have that, massive footprint within South Africa, Africa, even globally. They are staying up to date on the trends. They've got clients who also are forcing them to change how they hire, how they train their staff. So, Boipelo, thank you for, giving us insight into how you guys are staying competitively ahead of everybody else. Now, I'm just going to move on to Kevin Malunga. I see then Helen's hand is up. We'll go over to Helen, and Claire as well thereafter. So let's get some insight from Advocate Kevin Malunga.
Thanks, Alison. I'll be very quick. Just before I logged on onto the Zoom platform, it first checked whether I was a robot. So I had to go past that hurdle where I had to click a few pictures, etc. So I think that's taken care of. But my sense is that law is not a threatened field yet. If I give you examples with the bankers, you will note that a lot of banks have closed branches because of banking apps. So Standard Bank had to close about 150 branches around the country because of the fact that people could do cell phone and online banking. Likewise, travel agents, you've got your booking.coms, your cheap flights. You can literally plan and complete an overseas trip on your phone, and your Airbnb and so forth. But I certainly believe that law is really a multidisciplinary sector, and I have a feeling that we are not threatened as a profession. But I think in terms of our relevance and our ability to work optimally, that's where we need to walk the talk in terms of technology. One of my projects when I was setting up the state law advisor, setting up the Office of the Chief Justice, was that the emphasis was on e-filing, setting up e-filing mechanisms, court annex mediation, and so forth. Some of the stuff that is now the subject of corruption allegations. But the point is, the future is about moving with the times in terms of technology, ensuring that lawyers are technically savvy, that there won't be a role in future for manual filing of documents. Lost dockets, for example. People in criminal law speak about lost dockets, largely because these were paper, these were paper-based. So I think once we move away from that, I think, and I agree with Boipelo and others who say, look, it's really about the type of skill that you have that will need to be to really move according to the times. You've got SARS has shown it can be done, Home Affairs. And then lastly, in terms of certain sectors, I suspect we'll have to be more adept technologically. Your tax law, contract law, leases and sales. A constitutional litigation matter, maybe not so much. Criminal law matter, not so much. But I think I'll leave it with that.
Thank you, Kevin. I think, law is so broad, and, it's something that touches on every single point in your life. You've got a cell phone in your hand, you've probably got a cell phone contract. You live in a house, you probably have a bond or a rental agreement. You have a job, that means you have an employment contract. And law really is planted everywhere around us, just in different and such varied sectors. And that is why it's such a broad and diverse and interesting industry, and why some professionals, like you say, will be more hard hit than others. And, some will have to adapt, and some will have to develop technology that assists them to stay up to date and competitive. Now, Helen, I see you also had your hand up. I'm not sure if you'd like to give us some of your input. I see then Silna and Cleone also have their hands up, so we'll go to them thereafter.
Thanks, Alison. I think just to build on what Kevin and other people have been saying, is that I think, to me, this has to be client-led. As law practitioners, our clients are leading the way in terms of embracing tech, and they want things that are simpler, better, and faster. And I think as lawyers, we are inherently, maybe I speak for myself, we're reactionary, our personalities, and we're scared of tech. And I don't think we should be. I think one thing COVID showed us was that you get over that very quickly. I mean, there was that, the poor lawyer who used the cat avatar in front of the judge. We're going to have those moments. We're all going to have those moments. But COVID taught us that we can do it, and that we can't afford to be reactive. I was reading something the other day where it said it took almost 70 years to get to 50 million airline users. And it took something like, I think it was something like 20 days to get to 50 million users on Pokemon Go. So the point is, we can't afford to be reactive anymore, and we can't afford to be scared. We have to be curious as lawyers, and we have to become agile. And that's scary for us. But I think if we see it as an opportunity, we're all in the same boat. I know our knowledge supported Bowman's get something like 10 new apps a day or a week to test out. And some of them we can't use, some of them we can, some of them we've trialed and haven't worked, and some are working brilliantly. And in fact, we're collaborating with clients to improve. So I'm going to stop chatting now, but I just think it's something we need to change mindset, not be reactive, not be scared, but be curious and be agile, and work with our younger people coming into the profession. We've got grad recruitment from a few firms here. They're going to lead the way, because us older lawyers, this is not our comfort area. So I think this is a real opportunity for younger lawyers to show the way.
No, absolutely, Helen. And I think that we really are seeing a whole new breed of lawyer come in. Lawyers who you'll ask them to find law reports in a law library, and it's like, what is a law library? It's all online now. And I think that we really are, having to embrace this change, and that there is going to be a new breed of lawyer. And I think that just comes with the digital changes that we've seen generationally, and the technology that we've all grown up with versus what the kids now will grow up with. I think that's going to affect how we work in general across the board. Now, Claire, I see you had your hand up. I'm not sure if you still want to chat. I haven't forgotten about you. So I just want to get Claire's input as well.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why every time I put my hand up, it automatically goes down, but it was up. I agree with the sentiments. And I think just from a psych perspective, we're a legal tech business. We've been fully remote for 5 years. So we don't have a single office anywhere in the entire world. And with that, we don't have a single piece of paper or legal piece of paper that's been printed either. So everything we do is run through technology. And then, echoing the sentiments is that we do need lawyers. So we've got 200 legal tech consultants from across the world, all of whom are qualified lawyers in their various jurisdictions. So very much relevant. It's just the actual skill and the application of that is more around technology. So when we kind of understand what our client's legal landscape looks like, we're able to recommend the legal technology that would best suit their business. And again, completely removing any paper-based contracts and kind of taking that whole contract lifecycle management and running it through technology. And I think about, a lot of the people that we've brought in from South Africa, are candidate attorneys, not much actual legal experience. But what we've done is train them on all the different technologies that we use. So we've kind of put them through intensive training programs. They kind of have come up to speed with legal technology. So still very much advising clients in terms of whatever their requirements are from a legal perspective, but everything has been run through technology, which has been helpful to our clients as well. So, we're talking about massive reduction in time in terms of contract lifecycle management. So we've got clients who, typically the whole lifecycle might take 32 days, and we've reduced that to 72 hours by running the entire sort of program through technology. So I think, when we think about AI and replacing paralegals, and I think it's a bigger conversation around, the future world of work and how technology has impacted every single profession. I think that positions are all still relevant. It's about the skill and the application of that would fundamentally change.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. And that's a phenomenal achievement. So well done to you guys. And I think it's such an important thing to realize is that there are companies like Claire's Psych out there who offer services that make the client's life easier. How many times have you signed a contract and misplaced it? How many times have you forgotten when a contract expires? How many times have you forgotten what a notice period is? And simple things like that, offering things that simplify and make your client's life easier, which is ultimately how you sell anything in this world, is to give somebody something that would make their lives easier, that would fill a need. And I think that, Claire, you've really got something going there with Psych, and that's fantastic to hear that remote remote work is also something you've been doing, not only from COVID times, but you say for the past 5 years. So really ahead of the curve there in terms of, not needing a physical office, going paperless, which also, in turn increases sustainability and your green footprint. So thank you, Claire. Some really awesome, little bits of information you've given us there as well. All right, so now let's move on to Silna, and then Cleone, I will come to you.
So, Alison, I think I'm coming in from a very different angle as we're a medium-sized firm, but we're a extremely specialized boutique firm. We specialize exclusively in rentals and evictions. So not even a lot of conveyancing or anything else in there, exclusively rentals and evictions, which is very different. For instance, I was extremely excited because I have a majority female team. No, not only female team, but a lot of ladies. Most of our attorneys are ladies. And I hate sending the ladies to court. Now, the difference in my practice and why it looks different from the other firms in this specific conversation is when it comes to an eviction, obviously it has to go through court. There's no other way of doing it. We were super excited about virtual court. And I must say, I think after this, all the chaos on, oh my goodness, what happens if the registrar doesn't send you a link, or chaos like that around virtual court. The moment we received this directive less than 3 weeks ago, that the majority of our unopposed motions will have to be heard in open court again. I don't think I've seen the attorneys be this sad as in this case. And it's very interesting. I am very close to the other eviction attorneys, eviction specialist firms. And it's interesting. Some of the attorneys are of the opinion that they want to be in physical court. And my question was actually, why do you prefer to be in physical court? And the one much older practitioner said, because then he can argue with the judge and he can really tell him what he thinks. Otherwise, he can just, the judge can sort of just ignore it, and he can't really get that close interaction with the judge. With me, much younger firm, majority female attorneys doing the appearances. For us to do unopposed motions in physical court, it means we in court at least with at least daily, obviously with more than one matter. And it's an absolute pain for the people to go back to court. It's like the biggest chaos that's hit us is to go back to court. And I thought that is something interesting to observe. In 2 years, we got so used to virtual court that now we are sad to do our unopposed motions in physical court. Like, to the point, I want to write a letter and say, like, you go do your own appearances, my lord. I don't want the ladies to go to physical court because it's A, not safe, and B, it's frustrating. It takes so much time. And talking about billing and the change in that side of things, we don't bill per hour. So we are that one firm that our time is in fact not money. We broke our evictions up into phases, and I charge an all-inclusive fee per phase. So I'm one of the weird entrepreneurial attorneys that changed the way we bill, and that is horrible for us to have to go back to physical court, because if it was a quick virtual hop on and off, the amount I have to charge for the phases where we have appearances now has to change because we have to go back to physical court. So I think I come in from a slightly different angle than the other guys, but I thought let me throw in my 25 cents on that one as well.
Yeah, no, and I think, Silna, you've raised some really valid, concerns there. And there are a lot of, courts where it isn't safe outside the courts. We do live in a landscape where, to be a female going alone, they don't feel safe. And, there are attorneys who have been used to appearing virtually who don't want to go back. And it was something that we saw we had a lot of hiccups with. I know I was there when COVID hit and we thought, what's going to happen to our matters on the roll? We were all panicking. We had clients phoning us. We were trying to phone the court. Nothing seemed to work. It was really, really scary. And, throughout this digitization and going online with court, we've had a lot of hiccups. We've had a lot of problems. We seem to have gotten it right in certain courts and other courts not so much. And it also is really dependent on, where you are. Are you on the unopposed roll? Are you on the opposed roll? Which registrar do you have? Because are they trained to use the online system sufficiently? Some registrars, will help you better than others. And we've had a lot of rollout hiccups with going online, but now, to go back is also just as counterproductive. We're almost there. We've almost got it right. Now we're going back to how it was. And I think that we also need to align that expectation with our client. We're offering the client this highly digitized, technology-driven service. We've given them software or access to apps that can help them. But then at the same time, when they come to us and they've got a matter that has to go through these archaic processes, they get frustrated. And it's a frustration, sometimes to be a lawyer. You feel like everyone's angry at you. You've got the client, you've got the court, you've got the judge, you've got all these different people that you're trying to make sure help you so that you can get a matter to a close. And I think that, this has been one of the things where we perhaps fumbled. And, COVID made us do it out of necessity, but in doing that in such a rushed manner, perhaps we missed some crucial foundation building blocks. And how do we now adapt that? How do we as lawyers fight for our clients to make sure that their matters come to an end as speedily and as pain-free as possible? And that's something we really do have to have a discussion around and think about. Now, Cleone, I haven't forgotten about you. Let's hear what you have to say as well.
So what I wanted to just discuss a bit was the point that was brought up about how the clients are actually driving our innovation and change. And, just from my own personal perspective and what I have gone through with my clients, we are completely digital at the moment. And I personally work with SMEs and startups, and I absolutely love my clients because they also push me to change and to innovate. And they've got, we're busy focusing on setting up globally, helping the companies expand. We're helping the companies. They're very focused on ESG at the moment. So we have had to actually become a multidisciplinary firm. I now partner with a financial and ESG investment company, and I've got IT companies that also assist me. And we're able to actually now go into those SMEs and startups and give advice, not just about the legal opinions. We're able to help them with tax implications, with offshore immigrations, with offshore investments. We're able to actually now help them by using the technology to go from just a legal advice to becoming part of the company, an integral part of the company, where we help with project management, where we help with all of these different aspects. And honestly, I get super excited when talking about it. My clients know I absolutely love them. And I love about how much they've taught me at the same time. It's not just that I'm teaching them a bit about the law, I'm teaching them about the finance aspect. Every single time I have a consultation with the clients, I'm there 24/7. They know they can call me at any point in time, but every single time I pick it up, I pick up the phone, I learn something new. I've now become completely in love with EdTech and helping EdTech companies, because the technology that's being used in there is completely different to education companies in general. With the technology, it's a completely different set of laws. It's a completely different set of focusing on contracts, on understanding end user agreements now, on understanding the importance of, for example, copyright in apps. So the fact that the law is so client focused, if we use that to our advantage, we can become a much more knowledgeable and multidisciplinary service and profession in general.
Leonie, thank you. I think that is so true. And Boipelo, I see your hand is up. I just want to say that I think she's made a very important point there, and that is that, there is a view of attorneys, legal practitioners out there, that we charge a lot of money and we don't actually solve anything at the end of the day. And that's because we're not empowering clients. And I think the approach that Leonie is taking is one that we should all really think about. Are you actually empowering your client, or are you only coming in when there's been a huge mess made? And clients will actually be far more, loyal. They'll be far more trusting if you make them feel empowered. Legal advice is something that is often inaccessible, especially within South Africa, especially to people who can't afford it. There are very limited places where they can get that advice. And I think that making somebody, feel empowered, if they're a landlord, for example, what does a lease agreement look like? What are the basics? Have you put something in place for them that is preventative? And it's that prevention rather than cure that I think we also really should look at. Cleone, you've been speaking about EdTech, which is fantastic and something we are so interested in here at Regenesis. It's fantastic to hear that you also are involved with it. Like really amazing things that we've never even heard of. And there is that bridge and that disconnect between what our client is doing and what we do as lawyers, and we need to give them solutions that are practical, that can be implemented practically, and that give a holistic solution. We're not just solving one legal arm of the solution, we're giving you a solution that gives your business the competitive edge. And that's ultimately why clients will come back, why clients will want to, be a client of yours and follow your company, is because you're giving them more than just a problem solved. We're making sure that we're giving them the prevention, not the cure. Boipelo, your hand was up, so I'd love to hear from you as well.
I just wanted to add, I love the point that Solna also made there about, being lawyers that recognize that what you're actually providing to a client is value add. And so to the extent that the profession requires lawyers to move beyond billing by the hour and rather billing by value add, that's also where you're also developing, your client base. That's how you're also even developing your lawyers so that they're more adaptable to the needs of their clients, right? So if your client shouldn't necessarily be billed for how long it took you to get to an answer, what our role is, I guess as the lawyers or the law firms, is ensuring that we then have the right equipment and the right tech to get to those answers faster, and that our clients are then loyal to the fact that what we're giving them is something that's going to be of use to them, not just in responding to that one question that they're looking at, but beyond that, and ensuring that you're helping the client grow because they're also running a business, and you're then also developing your own business in that way. So it's in ensuring that you have lawyers that recognize that they need to be adaptable to the needs of their clients. They need to be curious about what is happening in not just the legal space, but what is happening in the client space as well. And that is then how you then continue, to move forward. So yeah, I just wanted to add that point specifically to Selma's point.
Thank you, Boipelo. And I think that is really the integrated approach that we have to take. Imagining that we actually do have a desk in the client's office, or we have a laptop and we work for that client and we are part of their business and we are doing that value add. Now, to touch on that point, my next point of discussion, we want to know and we want to give people pointers out there as to what, in your opinion, are some absolutely essential tools or structures that you've put in place, to keep ahead of the curve. And this may be to be strong with elite litigation strategies, perhaps it's services you offer to your client. But now, in order to operate for the future, what are some essential tools in your firms or your companies and structures you might have put in place that you absolutely cannot function without, and you don't think that any lawyer watching this who wants to go out there in the world and start their own practice or start their own company, something that they should really think about implementing as well? I see a lot of cogs turning there. Hopefully there's some answers we can throw out. All right, I see Silna's hand has gone up and Helen's has gone up. All right, so Silna, I'll go to you first and then we'll move on to Helen.
Again, me and my weird suggestions here. Bear with me. the one thing that I won't be able to go without in my firm is actually core values rather than rules and regulations. I think one of the biggest issues with law firms is that the thing that we use to run our business with is in fact attorneys. And if there's one thing that doesn't like rules, it's an attorney. The moment you give an attorney a rule, he's going to find a way to get around a rule or just bend the rule a little. And personally, and I think that's the benefit of having a medium-sized firm rather than a large firm, is I am very close to my team. I can tell you exactly who my receptionist is currently dating or wanting to date. I know exactly what's happening in from every attorney to my tea ladies' personal lives, only in as far as they obviously share. I promise I don't pry, but I'm very close to my team. I'm more a people's person than anything else, and I suppose that's why I don't personally do litigation, but I just manage my firm, and managing my firm means being very, very close to my team. So I've decided to, instead of doing things like having specific rules, even specific targets, just before COVID actually hit us, I was wild enough to take individual targets away. And I think if I say that in a conversation like this, there's at least 3 medium-sized heart attacks happening. We have a daily target in our firm. So the team has to reach a daily target. And we then have a meeting at the end of the month, obviously, but everybody can see everybody's feet. So it's not a shame thing. It's not the way we do it. The way we do it is everybody can see what's happening, and you will see during the course of the day, the attorneys will chat to each other, be it on our WhatsApp group, because they are allowed to work remotely as they want to. Whether they want to come in or not, it's up to them. But they will have a conversation and say, listen, I have to draft today. I'm not going to bill a cent. What's the planning around that? And I must say, it creates a situation where you have more cohesion. Okay, but we are a super kumbaya firm, guys. You're really welcome to come and have a cup of coffee. We are bizarre at the best of days. But because we have 2 core values, so our core values are quite simple. We have the heart of a lion, so we are true and tenacious and brave, and we have the spirit of passion. So without passion and without loving what we do and loving working in this team, we won't achieve anything in any event. So that created an opportunity to have a work environment and a workforce that doesn't want to find ways to escape the system or sort of circumvent the system. But because we are very close, really seriously sort of family orientated firm, it's easy for us to manage the firm with core values. But I will say this, it was recently SSLR's 14th birthday. So for law firm age, we are still pretty young, especially in comparison to the other firms here. I actually started the firm when I was 24, which was silly and scary, but I'm grateful I did that. And it took me a good 10, 12 years to get to a point where we don't have to have rules and where we can open the door and be wild and not have office hours. We don't have dress code, like seriously, we walk in there and the attorneys that are in the office will wear shorts and sneakers. It's quite something to see, obviously, unless we see clients, but even our clients must not get used to the kind of attorney they're working with. I like bringing law to clients that are untraditional. If I meet with somebody in ripped jeans and all stars, my knowledge of my field of law is no less. Actually, I can not be worried about my stilettos on top of all my other things I have to think about. I can actually be comfortable. And I openly say that to my clients, and I expect the same from the attorneys. So we're definitely not for everybody, but for the people that are comfortable with the way we do things, being very untraditional lawyers, I think it's actually quite valuable, because we do enjoy working a bit more than what we did in the old days when we were a bit more traditional. So that's how we are doing it.
Super, Silna. Thank you so much for that input. So Silna's spoken about her core values and really aligning people with her firm, and hiring people in her firm who align with those core values. I see, Helen, was your hand up? I hope I didn't miss it there. And then we'll move on to Hanal and Charlene and Kevin.
That's just in terms of the question about kind of processes that are must have. I mean, the way I see it is kind of three. The one that helps you function better as a firm, and there's lots of stuff that helps you with billing and big hand, it's people who still dictate, etc. But if you look at it from a client focus point of view, I mean, there's amazing tech that's come out. You get e-signatures, which have shortened how you do signatures, which is amazing, and which helps because obviously security and confidentiality is key. And there's also things like e-discovery. We used to have a war room, and you used to have a massive trial with a whole lot of documents, and you used to have a candidate attorney going through duplicates and trying to paginate and index. Their time can be spent doing stuff that they enjoy more, which is adding more value to the client, because we've now got the tech to do things like e-discovery. You've got platforms like Kira, which is artificial intelligence that you can train up. So in a due diligence, it can go through thousands of leases and pick up the clauses that are, that the prospective buyer is concerned about. So I think there is amazing bespoke legal tech that plugs into different types of law, and which saves clients money, but also allows us as attorneys to deliver a better service. And then just a third point, which I think is probably one that's the most interesting, is the working with clients in our whole life cycle of the service offering with tech. So that's things like commoditizing project, things like data privacy packages, or creating commoditized legal offerings, automating documents, so things like settlement agreements or employment contracts, where there's a lot of repetition and they're not senior exec with a lot of bespoke, where you can now automate things, or even helping them with their own legal project management. So introducing some of our tech. So I think the point is not one product which is indispensable. I think it is testing out an array of them, and different areas of law use it differently, and different clients need different. So you have to sit across the table with clients and actually say, what does your business need, and see how we can offer that. So yeah, just leave it at that. But I think it is, for someone, I mean, I'm not even on social media, but if I find this very exciting, I know when we speak to our clients about it, how much value they see. Now, not to talk about Bowman's, a lot of the firms are doing this.
Helen, thank you. I think those are some really awesome pointers. And I think that it is so industry specific and client specific, like you say. But the fact that there is technology available now that 20 years ago we would have thought is out of a sci-fi movie is fantastic. And it makes, business more efficient. It makes bigger projects more efficient. It also allows, fewer people to take on, a lot more work. So we would have never been able, for example, you get a massive tender, and now you have to go and recruit for companies. You have to place, let's say, 1,500 people at a company, for learnerships or whatever it might be. There is technology out there to help legal and HR professionals, and maybe people in employment law, to really plug into those massive projects. And various projects will apply, this can apply to them. But there's technology now that makes it so much better to be efficient with your time, and to do things that are not tedious, to not follow archaic ways of getting contracts out. And Helen, thank you. I think that is a fantastic pointer for anyone looking to go into law and running their own firm or joining a firm, is that they know these tools can be out there or developed there for them. All right, so I'm now going to move on. I think Hanal was the next person up, and we're going to hear from Hanal next.
Thank you, Alison. And I just want to talk about that, because what you are saying is there might be some people on this webinar that want to start a practice. And I think where I'm coming from is to talk about a small practice and what I really struggled with when I started my practice. And I think something that is overlooked so often is how much time we actually spend on admin instead of actually spending it on the time servicing our clients. And I think that was something that I had to deal with in my practice in order to ensure that I have more time. And I think that admin goes to two fronts. So the first front is obviously your paper trails. you don't have your file size necessarily like big firms have that save the documents. So you need to look at digitalized systems in order to have that. And we have real-time documents, so you don't have to go through 10, 11, 12 documents to find out what was the latest draft, what is the new draft. You can see what is the changes that were made. And it just makes it so much easier from that front, from an admin perspective. And then the second point, and Helen has touched on it, is obviously your accounting systems. A small firm and a medium firm who doesn't have an accounting department spends hours on that accounting, which takes away from doing actually what you want to do, and that's servicing your clients and being a lawyer. And we have service providers like Legal Interact, for example, who I know is a service provider that keeps updated with our digital change. And they always keep up to date at what will make the life of legal practitioners simpler in order to do that invoicing systems. And I believe as a practitioner, you need to look into service providers like that and digitalization to minimize your admin so that you have more time to actually spend on being a lawyer.
Thank you, Hanal. And that's a very valid point. And especially for smaller firms, it's important to make sure that often you don't have a lot of capital. So you really are going out on often a shoestring budget. You're taking a big leap of faith, hoping that you're going to get clients. And you have to find systems that do work for you. And it can be intensely administratively heavy, when you start your own practice and you also don't have, 50 or 100,000 Rand a month to spend on fancy software or the very best of whatever, accounting software you may need. So looking at things like what Hanal has mentioned will be important for those looking to start their own small practices. It cannot be an easy decision to make. We know it's daunting. So yeah, Hanal, thank you. That is a fantastic contribution you've made there. Next, I'm going to move over to, is it Charlene? And she had her hand up. And we'd like to hear from you. And then I'll move over to Cleone. Then I've got Kevin and Claire.
Thanks, Alison. I think I wouldn't have done the HR profession justice if I didn't talk about mental wellness in the workplace, right? Across the board, I don't think it's not an industry specific issue that we're dealing with within the organizations that we work for. But I think for us to continue to be sustainable in future, we need to build up processes and programs and enable our people with tools to deal with the pressures. I keep looking at, my mom working 10, 15 years ago versus what I need to do now. And the whole work-life integration, process. I personally don't believe in work-life balance because I don't think it's easy for anyone. I think the always-on culture is here. We need to be able to manage it. And I think as a legal profession, I definitely think this profession works extremely hard. And what we do need to do is make sure that people are able to bring their best selves to work, right? So that they enjoy where they work and they enjoy the type of work that they do. But most importantly, they're able to show up to our clients as their best selves every single day. So I think mental wellness, we are seeing it, with all this tech coming in, we're also seeing a spike in mental illness and mental wellness challenges within the workplace, which I think is important to address. In this current generation specifically, we're seeing a spike in the graduate industry as well, with grads coming in. Some of them have never been in a workplace. They didn't have to face people. They've only really studied online over the last few years, and now they need to come into the workplace much more than before. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that that's such an important point to make, is that the technology has evolved, but at the end of the day, we're still human and we still have our emotions, and we have to deal with stress, and we have to deal with family problems. And, you've got to come to work and you've had a baby crying all night and you haven't slept. And how do we manage that? And how do we still keep that human element, with our staff? We've got technology that's advanced so far. I mean, we speak to most of our parents and grandparents parents, they never had a computer that they could take home with them. So they couldn't physically work until 2, 3 in the morning. They didn't have a phone. There was a landline, if that. And if you weren't at home or you didn't have access to the office, nobody phoned you. And now it's an always on culture, exactly what you've said. We have to be switched on all the time. We have to, be accessible all the time. There is hardly such a thing nowadays as work-life balance. You'll be on holiday responding to emails. We know that's what people do. It's part of our culture now. And how do we find ways to keep our staff? And one of the most important things is to make sure that they are kept happy and that they're able to de-stress and they're able to spend quality time with their families or friends, actually switched off. And switching off now is becoming harder and harder to do. So it's important from the HR perspective to make sure we are focusing on staff wellness. And then, like you say, graduates have studied online. They've never actually had to come to a client meeting. And your firm may expect that you look a certain way, you dress yourself a certain way, you're professional and you're presentable. And here you've got someone who's never had to do that. And how do we ready our graduates to be presentable to clients? You are going to have clients who will still want face-to-face meetings, who will still want to have certain etiquette from your staff. And making sure that our graduates are up to speed on what the corporate environment looks like and what the professional working environment looks like is so important. And there is such a gap. And I think that there's also something to teach there, not legal specific, but just in any professional working industry as well. As much as we can learn from the younger generation coming in with all of their technology knowledge and the advantages they have, we absolutely still do need to teach them about how to conduct yourself in an office, how to be professional, how to dress, how to face clients. And that is something really important and some great pointers you provided there for us. All right, next up, I'm going to move on to Kevin Malunga. If you can give us some pointers there, Kevin. What are some essential tools or structures that you see people needing?
Okay, thanks a lot, Alison. I think for me, the big question at the end of the day is, why do we do what we do as lawyers? I think this is the era of me too, me. So people have been thinking a lot about themselves. Of course, we do this to make a living. We do this largely to change the world, but there are also certain value systems that law and I'm affected by some of the work that I've done in the past. That there's a lot of constitutional values, access to justice issues, promoting equality among people. So there are a lot of things that, in the course of your day-to-day work, consciously or subconsciously, you are pushing certain agendas that are for the greater good. So I think that's one of the things that for me stands out. And I think a lot of people would then have to think about being more accessible in the way they do their work. And technology is enabling that, right? So you can log on with a client who doesn't have to drive 50 kilometers from Pretoria to see you. That's fine. That's a good thing. But then there are certain other things that COVID has also enabled. People need to think about being more accessible in terms of their language, be less cryptic, keep it straight and simple. And of course, the one thing I see as well is that based on the contributions earlier on, is that the sole proprietor is not dead. People used to say, hey, not disrespect to Bowman and Cliff Decker and all those that are sitting here on the panel today. They're big firms, right? They used to think that is the future. But then post-COVID, there are many one-woman, one-man shows who are thriving. So there are so many of those dynamics that I think we need to get back to the drawing board of what does the law really seek to achieve in people's lives? And I think that's it's like I'm being a bit sentimental, but I think it's very important that we get back to those foundational values. And of course, I know, on a lighthearted in a lighthearted fashion, you remember there's a line from Henry IV in Shakespeare where he says, "Let's kill all the lawyers." So, and I think there are many people who want that genocide to happen. There's a song later on, I think, Eagles song, that emphasizes that. So I think we just have to get back to the idea that people think that we are ethical people, and people think lawyers are liars, etc. But that's for me, the issue is accessibility. Getting back to the value system of what this does. And South Africa has a constitution, etc. But anyway, that's where I'll leave it.
Kevin, thank you. And I think that's so true. I think we really do have to think beyond, what we do for our clients, what we do on a day-to-day basis. We have to have a bigger picture, and we have to say, well, what is the legal industry actually there to do? And what is the oath that I took as an attorney? What is the oath I took as an advocate? What is the thing that I committed to, and what is the reason I decided to pursue this, line of work? And that would obviously, to be someone who pursues justice, who ensures that there is equality, fairness, that people feel represented, that we can make our clients and also society foster that trust that, we are there to help, ensure that there is justice and fairness in society. And that is ultimately what we are there to do. From a constitutional and overarching perspective, it is something we should never lose sight of. And it's difficult, especially now in globalization, with all this digitization that's happening, we've lost that human touch to some extent. And that's something we have to bring back, is that humanity. At the end of the day, we have software, but we're still humans. We still need to ensure that there are values, and those founding values are solid. They never are shaken. They never crumble. So, Kevin, thank you. That's a very, very good thing to go and think about tonight when you're lying in bed, and you're thinking, why do I want to pursue this profession? And something we should all do in any line of work that we take on. Right now, Cleone, I'm going to move on to you, and then Claire, I will also move on to you.
Thank you. So I definitely want to just add on a bit to what Kevin says, because I completely agree with him, and tying on to Silna as well. So in my opinion, technology is meant to help us advance our values. As long as we keep our values there, I think it's really important. There are 5.1 billion people in the world that do not have access to legal services. And it is a constitutional and a fundamental right. If we use technology and social media to actually help these people see more about the law, understand more about the law, know what to do, I think it'll really impact and change the whole view of what the legal industry is. Another aspect that I have seen, which many clients struggle with, which is why sometimes in my little reviews of contracts, I always put a little disclaimer saying, I don't believe in legalese, which is why this document doesn't have any. I think the removal of legalese when we are interacting with clients is really important, which is why it is a core aspect of our business. Social media is also really important to keep us up to date with legislation and other views and other opinions. Ethan Kisner, it was a 1994 article he once wrote, and he mentioned that the legal profession needs to be a community of knowledge and not a storehouse of information. And I think keeping that as a core value in a company will then enhance our ability to use technology to better the environment, to better people. And with Silna, what she said about value-driven and not target-driven, I have actually seen firsthand that someone may not, for example, in a bank, someone may not reach the target, but the clients absolutely love that person. And because they don't reach the target, they're removed. And I think from an HR perspective, that is not the way to handle it, because certain people may reach targets, but clients may hate them, because essentially the structure of a law firm is the lawyers. It is the lawyers, and technology is there and helps us advance being better lawyers and advancing sending out knowledge. And even looking at the most mundane, simple technology, for example, SharePoint, we are able to actually collaborate with your clients and show them and help them understand in real time the ability to change a contract and explain to them how this contract is changing and showing them those aspects. I think that technology can be used as part of the structure of actually being client focused and value driven and keeping to the ethics. Because just my little final note, what I believe is everybody is equal before the law, but not everybody is equal before lawyers.
Peony, thank you. I think you've really, spoken to a lot of sentiments that everybody will identify with. And, there is a serious lack of access to legal services, not just in South Africa, globally. There is this almost veil of secrecy that sits over our profession. And, where do you draw the line between holding information that makes you competitively ahead of the game and actually helping the community at large and helping people get access to legal services? And I think that you've really touched on some important points there. And these are things that we should think about. These are things that people need to internalize and really, when you are giving your client a service, are you aligning to those values and are you aligning to that purpose? Claire, I'm now going to move on to you, and let's get your input as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I think, just going back to the question around, the tools and the structures or the technology that I think we can't live without. If I think about coming from the people and talent space and looking at human resources and how it's evolved over the last, decade or two. I mean, if we just take something like employment contracts, which can be quite tedious and quite laborious. And I mean, if I look at our business, we employ people from across the world, given that we're fully remote. So, since Monday, we've employed 5 people, 2 in Argentina, 2 in India, 1 in South Africa. So you're dealing with all sorts of different nuances and country-specific, employment legislation. But within that 48 hours, we've been able to get every single one of those contracts signed. And that's just due to the technology that we use by building out these employment contracts with specific workflows and data points in tools like Contract Express, where it's automated. And the ease of access to go into those specific employment contracts, change a few data points with the large majority already kind of being put in place. So you're really changing, maybe remuneration, start dates, etc. Pulling that over into another technology, which I think Helen, mentioned earlier around e-signatures. I mean, DocuSign is one of the fundamental technologies that we use throughout our business. So being able to use Contract Express, expediting the employment contracts through DocuSign, having all of those individuals being able to sign that within a 24-hour period, because you just kind of get this automated response. So it's not, in the past, it would be you print it out, you sign it, you scan it, the next person prints it out, signs it, scans it, and everybody's got a different version of the contract printed out, put in a file, locked away in an office somewhere. That is also a high risk, because it's paper-based and everybody has an opportunity to access that. Emails is one of the biggest cybercrime sort of areas, and you've got these contracts floating around on these emails chains, and then having to find these different versions, whereas using these technologies to kind of expedite that process means that it's stored in the cloud. It's very low risk in terms of accessibility or hacking. And I think it creates a really good brand image for us to be able to expedite those contracts and have people sign them and start the onboarding process a lot sooner, rather than, having to chase people via email or paper-based functions to get those contracts signed. And I think the adverse effects of that as well is that it allows us, from a people and talent perspective, to kind of reduce significantly the amount of time that we spend on administrative work, and allows us to focus more on the strategic aspect of the people and talent space. So I think, you know, from that aspect, being able to use legal technology to expedite employment contracts in particular has fundamentally changed our ability to hire people from across the world, and to reduce the time of signing those contracts, and effectively, you know, reduces the amount of time that they need to obviously work out their notice periods, because they rely on that in order to resign. So, you know, you're reducing somebody's notice period by even a week, which is a huge, you know, impact for us to have those people start sooner in our business. So those are some of, like, you know, the legal technology things that we use. And I think, you know, from an HR space, I would definitely not be able to live without that. It's made a fundamental impact on our ability to focus on other more strategic things in that space.
Thank you, Claire. And that brings me on to my next question. And I think Claire's really opened up the floor for the next question, which is, you know, what have the panelists observed in their respective industries, you know, in terms of risk and cybersecurity? How are you guys staying up to date on legislation, but also how are we protecting what we have? Now, like Claire said, somebody sends you a document or a contract, you've got to print it. How many printers do you know in people's homes anymore? I don't know of anyone in my age group specifically who owns a printer at home anymore, which means that these technologies are actually becoming essential. Nobody wants to go and lay out a few thousand for a printer, go and buy the ink, you know, make sure that they have to fix the paper jams. It's incredibly frustrating. Then the other person has to countersign. You get a hard copy, somebody doesn't file it correctly or scans it and doesn't save it in the right place, and the next thing, the contract is gone. And this is a problem that we need to talk about is, you know, now that we're moving away from a very paper-based, you know, law firm, or even a company that provides legal services, what is the risk that you've picked up? Have you picked up cybersecurity issues, or are you actually enjoying the way that we're going? So let's hear some other opinions. Claire, thank you for starting this topic. I'd like to hear what everybody has experienced. All right, let's move on to Cleone. Oh, Cleone, we're struggling to hear you there. Sorry, I think you are on mute.
Sorry, that was my
There
bad.
we go.
I get a bit excited. So the one aspect that I do want to touch on actually is the AI aspect. The aspect of risk in that regard is that it's proprietary information, but it's proprietary information that is being taught by humans, and humans are inherently biased. So that AI might have covert or overt biases, and because it's proprietary information, lawyers and individuals have to take that at face value, and you're not actually able to go into the programming, go into the algorithms to see those biases, which I have seen is quite a risk. Another aspect in which cybersecurity is a risk in our profession is that we have become more and more vulnerable to cyber attacks because of the fact that we have such personal information about our clients, about money with regards to our clients. And with the, I think it was in May, the LSSA actually had a webinar trying to warn us about this, because with the Fidelity Fund, there is an exclusion, for example, with the emails that get hacked. And this has happened in quite a few law firms, which I have noticed. The emails can get hacked, and with the certain cybersecurity, if you don't have that cybersecurity in place and you get hacked, you don't get payouts. And since 2016, when that exclusion came in, there has been more than 130 million rand that has not been paid out, and because of this. And if you look at, I think only 1/4 of legal firms in South Africa have cybersecurity insurance. So by using that, we can actually mitigate the risks. We can use reg tech in order to ensure that we've got this constant surveillance of our stuff in order to not only deal with the fallout, but actually be there and help provide the solutions and, you know, actually be there beforehand and detect it beforehand and use that to protect ourselves as well as our clients. Because yes, the police is the first point of contact, but the second point of contact is that people come to lawyers because they need to understand who, in terms of their contract, do they need to notify? What does Poppy say? What are the aspects that need to happen, because they've also got the attorney-client privilege. So using that, we can not only mitigate our risks, we can mitigate the risks of our clients.
Thank you so much. I think that's really, really valuable. And yes, we see it all the time, you know, where people are paying into trust accounts from hacked emails or false emails. There's been so many scams and you know, terrible cybersecurity threats going around and targeting law firms. So cybersecurity, you know, is essential. As technology evolves, unfortunately, so do the threats that come with it and the risks that come with it. We're no longer locking up an office and leaving files at home or at work, and they stay there. They're now in clouds, and they in, you know, databases that can be hacked and, you know, compromised, and that information can be leaked. And some of that information is highly sensitive, and is really important to protect. Boipelo, I see you had your hand up, and then I'll move on to our next panelist after that, Helen.
Thanks, Alison. I think just in addition to the points that Keone just made, it's just that also making sure that your employee base is constantly also learning and is educated about the implications of not being, of understanding the risks at play. So, you know, anyone's email can be breached. It's not just a director, it's not just the clients, etc. It's anyone. And you want to make sure that your employees understand the risks at hand and that you're constantly giving them that additional information, that education, so they understand, like, this is what happens if you, for example, don't feature your clients properly, if you don't, you know, onboard your client properly, if you don't follow up on that information, if you don't ensure that there's, you know, clear line of communication and understanding between the clients and ourselves in terms of what's being signed and how it's going to be stored and managed, etc. And then just making sure that your policies, just in terms of like your risk policies or even your IT policies, are also, you know, updated in terms of what the trends or the cyber risk trends are looking like. So I think it's, you know, more than just ensuring that you understand what the tech looks like, but making sure that your people understand the implications of that, so that they are then up to date and not accidentally, because, you know, we're human and we're prone to mistakes, that people aren't unintentionally making what could be very costly mistakes for clients or for ourselves.
Thank you, Boipelo. And I think that's a very important point to make, and that HR departments working in the legal sector specifically, you know, being one of the sectors where we deal with such important and sensitive information, have a greater duty, in a sense, to ensure that we're training staff correctly, we are equipping them with enough knowledge. You know, somebody knows how emails works, and they know how a SharePoint database works. They know what a drive is. Do they actually know how to protect those files? And are we ensuring that not only employees, but managers and senior management are equipped to deal with these threats and to, you know, not click on that link, which sounds ridiculous, but does happen. And, you know, sending out regular reminders, training reminders as well, to say, please, guys, these are different scams and these are different hacking techniques that go around, and you must be aware, and please, we are keeping you up to date on them. All right, Helen, I'm going to move on to you.
And just very briefly, just to build on, I mean, I think a lot of this is about legal risk and compliance, but it's also, as a point you made, about human beings. And we've heard a lot about copy and data privacy, but at the end of the day, I think as HR, and especially in the legal space, you're privy to a lot of very sensitive information about people in law firms, but also about your clients in that, you know, whether it's in due diligence, and I think it's not just seeing it as a legal thing, and we need to obviously put that in place, but also just that's a human being behind that. And if it's about health issues or things that they've gone to that they only want disclosed to very few people, it's not becoming desensitized to the fact that we're dealing with human people, human beings' data. So it's not just about data privacy or about risks to the firm. I'm just maybe speaking as an employment lawyer, but I mean, work closely with HR, but why it's so important that we need to use tech to look after that information, because it's got very real consequences for an individual if it does get out. And once it's gone out, there might be whatever legal remedies, but for that individual, that's not really helpful.
Absolutely, Helen. And I think that at the end of the day, there's a person at the end of that data. And it's very important to realize that, things like your health status or something very confidential in a family law matter with regards to minors could even be leaked. And this is very, sensitive information that we have to safeguard. And that is our duty, as HR professionals, as, lawyers as well. Now, Claire, I see you also had your hand raised. So I'm going to move on to you. We are going to come to an end of this fantastic webinar shortly in 10 more minutes. So we'll finish up with Claire and then I'll get everybody's final thoughts.
So yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Boipelo said, because I think that was really important around, I think it's also about educating and creating awareness with our employees on what that cybersecurity looks like, what phishing looks like, and how to recognize that as well, so that you can pinpoint that. So I think even for us, we do constant trainings around those HR policies, which are run on a platform, and kind of consistently delivering that message around, just remember to look out for, anything that seems, a little bit dodgy, immediately raise it, and just keep those documents off of email. Like, we don't have any internal servers. Everything is kept on the cloud or kept on the technology that we use, so really kind of safe and secure. But I guess as well, just making sure that we empower people to understand what that is and what that looks like, and kind of keep sending those reminders so that they are also empowered to recognize that and make sure that they kind of follow the process as well. So yeah, I think just to echo on that point, I think it's important to empower people in the business at every single level, no matter how junior or senior they might be, to recognize what those potential security risks could look like in order to mitigate that going forward.
Absolutely, Claire. And I think that although we've got these fantastic tools, they do come with new risks, new challenges, and new dangers that we really have to be aware of, and that we may not even be aware of until we, chat to certain providers of technology, and they say, listen, this is how you use our service, but please be aware. And I think that we also need to stay up to date. And one thing that was recently shared with me is, previously, the IT department in a company, for example, was seen as a service department who sat on, let's say, the side of the organization. That is actually in many companies now, and actually almost all of them, become a central point. Without a functioning IT department, who runs these things, we can't function. None of us can work. I mean, if you don't have a laptop that works or Wi-Fi that's on, you're not going to be able to work. And it's important that, we also ensure that we are doing our due diligence and that we can trust the people who give us these services, that we have safeguards in place, just so that we also put our clients at ease. We've seen recently, with credit bureaus, for example, having a leak of all this really sensitive information. People don't want their telephone numbers, home addresses, and every single loan they've got on their name out there, and that is happening. It's very real. And once it's gone and that data has been stolen, you cannot get it back. So there's only so much damage that you can mitigate once it's been done, and prevention is really important. Communicating with your staff, training your clients as well on how to look after their data protection is very important. We've seen lots of attorneys have their emails spoofed, and it says, please pay your money into this trust account, and it's not a trust account at all. And there goes the client, and he's paid the money, and it's now up to you to make sure that that does does not happen. So some really interesting points there as to how, what risks have come up and how we are to mitigate those risks. And as much as we've seen this amazing development and we are going to be able to tackle these challenges and change the legal landscape and, hire all these brilliant new breed legal eagles rather, we're going to have these risks that we've got to manage. And that's very, very important and something we cannot just disregard until it's too late. It's all about prevention, because there is actually no cure. Once it's been done, the damage has been done, you really are sitting in quite a predicament there. All right, so to all of our panelists who joined us, thank you so much. To our audience today. We've got 5 minutes left here. And if there's anyone who'd like to make some closing statements, something you'd like to leave us with, please do. I think we've got a wealth of knowledge that we've shared with you. We look forward to the rest of this HR series. We hope that you watch the rest of them in the different industries. And that gives you some insight into, the legal sector and with an HR lens. So how do we now focus on this digital age and really tackle things? Alrighty, so any final closing comments that anyone would like to make? Any questions? Okay, Silna, I see you've got your hand up, and then we will wrap up.
I was quick out of the blocks on that one. My final very quick point is probably, as much as technology is absolutely amazing and we have to incorporate it in our businesses, as attorneys and advocates for that matter, we're in a people business. It's our job to think about the people, not just our clients, our team members and ourselves. So embrace technology and build your business accordingly, but you won't be able to build a really thriving practice if you lose focus on the actual person that you are dealing with.
Absolutely. Thank you, Silna. I'm now going to move on to Cleone.
Thank you. I would just like to say that, just to add on to that point, technology is here to make our lives better and easier. It's not here to take away our jobs, because our jobs are people. Our jobs are interacting with each other, interacting with our clients, making sure our employees are happy and healthy, and using technology to that advantage. And I don't think it's something that nobody ever needs to be scared of it. Embracing the change is better than fighting it.
Absolutely. And I think that's such an important mindset to have. And it's such a human instinct, isn't it, to have fear of the unknown. It's like you've got to go into this dark cave and you don't know if there's light at the end of the tunnel. And there really is. And I think that it's our, job and our duty to really pull our fellow legal practitioners, our fellow colleagues, our clients out of that dark age and to say, we're going to be offering new solutions. We're going to be changing the way that we give services to our clients and to society at large, And I think that there's a lot of positive things that will come out of this. Kevin mentioned earlier, and I'll get to him now, a client doesn't have to drive 50 kilometers to see an attorney. The CCMA website now allows you, for example, to go and lodge a dispute online with a form. And although we have our own technology issues in South Africa with connectivity and the high cost of, accessing data to log onto the internet, hopefully that will change soon. And that will also allow us to really be more out there, beyond just our physical spot, let's say here in Sandton or wherever you may be in the world. We can connect digitally and we can really help make that change as law firms, as companies, as, legal tech companies as well. All right, I'm now going to move on to Kevin.
You may unmute. Thanks, Alison. I just want to, first and foremost, congratulate you and the organizers for a fantastic webinar. It's a very constitutionally compliant panel, you see, because I was the only man. So that's a sign that the profession has transformed quite substantially. As I indicated, at some point I was a state law advisor, and one of our projects was the legal practice bill, and which subsequently became an act. And there was quite a lot of resistance at the time because people said, oh, you're going to water down standards or whatever. And I am convinced, having listened to everybody here, that standards are actually being elevated by greater access and of course ensuring that there's more representation in the profession, because that was one of the issues. So I think the takeaway for me is a success story would be, I believe at the point, better perception of lawyers and what they do. A better view of lawyers as not being these, selfish. Recently, Regenesis had a panel, a discussion on Gordon Gekko's statement when he says greed is good, and there were some people from the finance industry, etc. Alison, Regenesis people, who were saying that's a statement that works, and I said no, that doesn't work. That will put you in jail. So I think it's important that we have at least that understanding that this is a service sector. Yes, you can earn a nice income from it, but ultimately let's improve the reputation of the industry. And I think, judging by the panelists, the industry is in very good hands and it's being transformed quite capably. I wish more people can watch this particular webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Kevin Malunga. Thank you so much for those wonderful words. And I think that we will see fantastic change. And, as our beloved Nelson Mandela did say, it always seems impossible until it's done. And I think that is very relevant to our discussion today. And sometimes change is not seeing the whole staircase, it's taking it one step at a time until you get to the top. And that's okay. And that's where we are going. And I think we're going to see some exciting things. 10 years down the line, we're going to be looking at this webinar thinking, jeepers, if only we knew what was coming and what was going to change. And I think that we have a lot to learn. I think we've got a fantastic new breed of legal practitioners coming in, but we also have our really established legal practitioners, some judges and very senior advocates who will guide the new generation of lawyers and really instill those same principles that have held the legal profession together for centuries and will for centuries to come. And I hope that everybody who attended today has learned something new. I hope that we've given you something to think about when you can't sleep at 3 a.m. And I hope that your brain will turn and that you've got some food for thought. And we've had a fantastic panel. Thank you everyone for your time. We've got such incredibly qualified people here from such diverse backgrounds, big firms, small firms, amazing legal tech and IT tech companies, really making a difference and changing the landscape, in South Africa, but also globally. And I think we have a lot that we can learn and aspire to with all of our panelists here today. So to everyone who's attended, thank you for your time. I hope that you sincerely enjoyed this webinar. I hope that you enjoy the webinar series that we do run. Please stay up to date on our social media pages, our YouTube channels. We have so many topics that we cover and amazing industry experts like we've seen today. And we hope that we can really inspire you to, become successful, take that entrepreneurial jump, start that law firm, start that business, add that value to your current company, whatever it might be that you want to achieve. We hope that through these webinars, we can leave you with those tools and those little bits of information to make you feel empowered to make those decisions. So thank you everyone here today. Have a wonderful day further, and thank you so much for your time. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.